Today, residents in one of Belfast's most deprived areas will hear
the New York City Controller William
rights
Thompson and his state counterpart Tom DiNapoli will be at the site of the former Girdwood Barracks in North Belfast, and also there will be Ines McCormick, who's chair of the Participation and Practice of Rights Project.
Says the plans must address the social and economic
This is their opportunity to say we want to be heard, but secondly, we want to hear about the best practice, we want to hear about the best standards, and we want to cautiously, cooperatively and constructively move forward.
It's a huge site with over £200 million earmarked for development, which, says Conference Chair Ines McCormick, means there's one chance to get it right. The conference is clearly letting people speak.
On the 28th of May 2008, residents from North Belfast convened a unique residents' jury. They aimed to gather evidence on how the regeneration of Girdwood Barracks and Crumlin Road Gaol can tackle the chronic levels of deprivation and inequality which these communities face.
The statistics are clear and they're really irrefutable in terms of the objective need and the chronic disadvantage which exists in the communities around the Girdwood site. And they really provide the context within which the regeneration of the Girdwood site should be carried out, and really against which the jury can measure whether it's been successful or not.
The jury adopted a human rights-based approach which works to support local groups in realising their economic and social rights. They focused on three key themes: equality, participation and accountability. The jury heard evidence from a range of speakers, including national and international experts on human rights, equality and regeneration.
Mostly when people talk about inequality, they're talking about whether there are equal opportunities. Can working class kids get as good an education or get good jobs as well as kids from middle class background? They're talking about not the differences in society overall, but equal chances from childhood. You know, whether people of different ethnic groups, whether men and women have equal chances. The data actually shows that you can't have equal opportunities with very big inequalities of outcome.
But the important point from our point of view is the legislation on its own. We have the tools here in terms of an equality impact assessment, but legislation on its own is meaningless unless it's actually delivered, unless you actually work through the processes and deliver on it. And as I say, that requires everybody at every stage of the process looking at what's going on and say, okay, in terms of our equality impact assessment framework, how are we here? How are we in terms of identifying the needs, and how are we at ways in terms of trying to deliver on those?
And if you look at the ladder of participation here, you see at the bottom of the ladder that there are non-participatory processes. Many governments, particularly in the United States, refer to this as participation. But it's really therapy and manipulation, where people come to you and they say, we're going to build a playground or we're going to develop a project, tell us what color it should be. And that's not participation. They sometimes move up the ladder to informing and consultation and placation. Most of what we see in our cities are around placation. They share information with you. They put out glossy brochures, but there really isn't a substantive involvement in either the development of the program or the aspects of what should take place.
I should also say the word regeneration was a completely alien word for many of us. You know, I never heard of it before in my life, other than refurbishing was usually the words that were used during those periods. But the research didn't say anything that we didn't know, that there was lots of deprivation. But certainly 50% of people living there wanted a place, to give the place a chance. But critically, 98% of the people in the complex wanted a knockdown, and that was a critical decision, which meant there was a significant mandate for going forward. It was against that background that We got into formal negotiations with Dublin City Council, Dublin Corporation as they were known at that particular time. And to be very honest with you, myself and a number of residents participated in those negotiations, and it was very clear those negotiations were going weren't going very far. They basically had the same agenda, which was a top-down approach, no real commitment to partnership, and which we know best, don't we, Craig?
When they drew the parameters for light inside the gasworks, when they drew the map up at first, they excluded all the local communities entirely. And our first struggle was to get our communities involved within the regeneration project. And we did. We got on board. But I must say that right from the very beginning, there was a very patronising attitude towards the community sector. There was a lack of trust, there was a lack of engagement, and there was a lack of respect. They knew it all. They knew better. I'm not saying that we knew. What we did know was what was wrong with our communities and what our communities needed.
In the end, we found ourselves dropped from the process, and we couldn't even see when that happened. We just knew we were. And what was happening was that capital development, which works to market values and processes, was meeting with City Council. And City Council, as Michael McGimsey suggested there, saw their architectural legacy in front of them. We were the ones who designed that thing and let it happen. And they forgot that their purpose was to work for the benefit of the disadvantaged communities.
Let's remember that there isn't an architect or a planner that knows your community and your needs better than you know them. And so what you need to do is make sure that when in working with them, that you're really, it's a two-way education process. They learn from you, you learn from them. Maybe you fight sometimes, but you get to a resolution. And then you begin to use the power of the community to make sure that the programs and the ideas come to fruition.
In terms of the master plan, we refer to it as a draft master plan. It isn't a definite master plan. It does not have concrete proposals. The master plan suggests proposals for discussion and for agreement.
And I think we've learned over the years that a plan is not a worthy tool unless it has its implementation plan already in place. And that includes the concrete steps for achieving the human and rights and social objectives. It's not enough to make general references to the deprivation of the community, but there have to be specific mechanisms and timetables spelled out. And that includes figuring out what the indicators are going to be in the future that we'll look at to see if these social and human rights obligations have been met by the project.
The equality impact assessments. They're designed precisely for something like regeneration master plans. Whenever there's a bunch of money being put into the area, whenever there's a new policy being put into the area, it's designed to hold the government accountable to actually address equality around housing, around education, around healthcare, around employment. But it also makes sure that those policies and monies are spent in the accurate way, making sure that they're actually targeted to address those statistics, so that when we look 20 years down the line, we see a change in those statistics that were presented.